Hello, troubleshooters, and welcome to another live Q&A with Mongoose. My name is Mongoose Cat, and tonight, this afternoon, or this morning, depending on your time zone, I will be chatting to famous games designer W.J. MacGuffin, author of the Paranoia Perfect Edition, otherwise known as that cool game with a computer and troubleshooters, and you shoot everything, and the GM lies, and you die repeatedly, but holy cow, is that game fun. Currently on Kickstarter with only 7 days to go. If you have any questions, please put them in the Questions for Mongoose channel here on our Discord. I'll try my best to keep up with them. But in the meantime, WJ, welcome to the live Mongoose chat. How are you?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone here, or to everyone here. I appreciate your patience for us figuring this out, but also I appreciate you just showing up and showing some interest. This is awesome.
This is very awesome. Actually, you know what? The best way to begin would be to give us a lowdown on what exactly Paranoia Perfect Edition is, because a lot of people entering this or hearing this for the first time might not know.
Paranoia Perfect Edition is perfect. Thank you for coming. Y'all have a nice day. Paranoia Perfect Edition is the latest edition of the award-winning Hall of Fame Paranoia RPG. Last edition was called Red Clearance Edition, or RCE. That came out in 2017. So now we're doing somewhere between a completely new edition and a heavily revised old edition. So we still have the same core mechanic as in the last Red Clearance Edition. But we've modified a few things, added a ton more, especially with setting details and lore. And voila! You have a brand new edition, especially designed to make everyone happy. Yes, we have somehow managed to do that.
But because it's perfect.
It's perfect for everybody.
You might say it's the perfect test.
I might say that. Matter of fact, I will. It is perfect, period. Anything else is superfluous.
Everything else. So I've got a few baseline questions here to ask you, but like I said earlier, if anyone does have questions, throw them into the questions for Mongoose here on our Discord, and I'll try to keep up, keep them rolling, and I'll ask them as I get them. So the first question I have here is, what is Project Infinite Whole? If it's from the last edition, what's it doing here?
Good question. The last product to be released for the previous edition was called Project Infinite Whole. It was a box set about research and design, one of the elements of the game, but it also included a 3-mission short campaign around an actual black hole accidentally created and then accidentally released deep inside the setting's main city, which is Alpha Complex. For those who don't know, this is a giant domed and underground city, so building a black hole near the center of it was probably a very bad idea. By the end of the campaign, the troubleshooters had managed to close the black hole, although lots of damage was done. So when I was trying to create a setting-based reason for a new edition, not just the fact that we want to clean up some rules and things like that, I thought of using that Project Infinite Whole disaster as a bridge between last edition and this one. Now, don't worry, it's not a meta plot. This is just another tool Paranoia GMs can use in their game. For example, if the players want to go off script and go to a part of Alpha Complex that you've never planned or seen or even thought of, too bad. Project Infinite Whole destroyed that whole sector and it's nothing there. Nothing. So don't bother. So again, it's not a meta plot. It's just a way to sort of connect between editions and imply that all Paranoia editions are part of the history of Alpha Complex, again, the setting, without actually demanding that GMs have to do things.
So it's very loose for the GM.
Yeah, again, it's more of a tool than anything else. We'll reference it in missions, say like, oh, we're going to go to this one location, but Project Infinite Whole destroyed it. and the plan to renovate and repair everything, called the Great Hotfix, has temporarily closed that room or corridor, or that person is missing. Pretty much whatever it needs is an all-purpose excuse for the GM to railroad the players into having more fun.
Nice. That sounds great. That sounds really fun. So, I've got a question here. Can you explain to us how treason stars change the computer dice rule?
Oh boy. Okay. This is going to take a little bit of an explanation, so y'all hang in tight. In the game, whenever you roll a die, it's a d6 dice pool mechanic. My apologies. That means you'll be rolling a handful of 6-sided dice. You always add one extra die called the computer dice. The 6 on this die has been replaced with a symbol of the computer. For those who don't know, the computer is the general intelligence AI that is in charge of everything and can tell people to do, well, anything. So when that 6 appears, or the computer symbol appears when you roll that die, that means the computer is suddenly paying attention to what you just did and what you were just about to do. It's a way to kind of decide mechanically when all the nefarious things players are doing might start to get them in trouble. What made sense to me was when characters get in trouble in the setting, they will get assigned 1 to 5 stars that represent how much a person should not trust them. They're called treason stars, because they indicate how much treason this person is likely engaging in. Makes sense that the computer would pay more attention to those who have more treason stars. So the more stars you get, the more often that computer symbol shows up. If you get 1 star, for example, well, if you roll a 5 or a 6, then the computer pays attention to you. 2 stars? 4, 5, and 6. But the thing is, the computer pays attention to the entire party, the team, not just that one person. So that means that the other player next to you, who might have 3 or 4 treason stars, is probably going to bring the white, searing hot attention of friend computer to the entire group. And we designed that in hopes that this would lead to more grief, more intra-party conflict, and that sort of thing. Should I give like a little woot when I'm done with a question? Does that help any? Or is that just too silly?
That's just too silly. But yeah, let's do that. So is it commies or terrorists?
Yes.
Yes.
In the game's history, communists or commies were always the main enemy and scapegoat. That's because originally the game was designed as a satire of the Cold War and was fittingly originally published in the year 1984. In the last edition, the designers had a great idea, which was that since communism isn't really a big problem, let's switch to terrorists as the main enemy. Now, I totally understand and respect that decision. It does make sense. But for my money, in Paranoia, commies or communists is just a classic term that's really hard to remove without taking away something from the game. So in this edition, we still mention terrorists because that's what all these secret society people are, the bad guys of the setting. Woot!
So we've already, I mean, one of the first questions we had come in was about the cards, but Perfect doesn't use cards, does it? So why do we have the card decks?
In other words, why do we have the card decks for sale as add-ons to the current edition's Kickstarter when the current edition doesn't use cards? Great question. It's for everybody. Remember, we're trying to please everyone?
Oh, yeah.
The new edition does not use cards. The biggest reason is that it slowed down gameplay a lot. There's a benefit from it, don't get me wrong. Sometimes the cards, my favorite is still called Suddenly Knives. They were great at sparking creativity among the players. But that doesn't seem to be too much of an issue in this game. Players are incredibly creative when they get into Paranoia. I'm sorry, my brain went elsewhere because I am so nervous about screwing up a rule while talking to everyone here. Did I fully answer that question or not?
I think so, but I mean, if we have follow-up questions, I'm sure someone will post them in the questions chat.
I did forget one bit, though.
Oh, what's that?
The actual answer. Why are cards available for sale?
Oh, yeah.
The game doesn't support cards, but it doesn't prevent them either.
Okay.
Some people really like the cards. So for those people, if they don't have cards already, they can go ahead and put them in as an add-on for here. But if all you want is to play the Paranoia Perfect Edition, then the card decks are not necessary. Woo!
So when will the stretch goals be available?
God, I don't know. No, seriously, I don't know.
It's a good question,
obviously,
isn't it?
It's a question that's really hard for this freelancer to answer. I like that phrase. It's hard for me to answer because I am just a freelancer. I mean, I'm the lead designer, so I decide a lot of things, don't get me wrong. And that power is oh so tasty.
Very important title.
Good. But I am not privy to discussions on fulfillment of Kickstarter, the production schedule. I know what's coming. I've seen the stretch goal on the page, same as everyone here. Yeah. And yeah, I came up with a lot of those ideas, or me and the team, or me and Mongoose. Not just me. Did that answer the question? Oh, God, I'm screwing everything up already.
You're fine. You're doing great.
No, I'm not. This is silly.
So we have a question here. While Paranoia has been a consistently fun game over the years, many people have had difficulties running Paranoia as a long-form campaign. What, if any, support does the new edition provide for longer-running games?
Great question. I think without a doubt, Paranoia shines as a one-shot. We've seen this so much over the decades. There's no point denying that. However, with Project Infinite Whole, again, the last product for the previous edition and sort of a background item in the new one, we wanted to create a campaign not for characters, but for players. Again, I wouldn't consider this a meta plot because we're not dictating things. Instead, for the Black Hole, for example, the first adventure was testing it out and then seeing how it escapes confinement. The second adventure would be trying to cover up the black hole that's slowly growing. And then the third one would be finally realizing the black hole is going to destroy everything that we know and love, and you have to tackle it. You can use different characters each time, but it's the players that enjoy watching the story evolve over time. And really, that's the whole point of a campaign anyway. The other little tidbit, there is character advancement in this game. There always has been. And it's always been small, which is understandable because a lot of troubleshooters, well, they don't quite survive a mission. They lose most of their lives by the time they get to debriefing, the end of the adventure. God, there I go again. I'm thinking 2 questions ahead, but I've lost both of those questions. So actually, I think I'm going backwards now.
But we're getting a lot of information, so this is good.
Oh, thank God I'm sensible to someone.
So, how crunchy are the advanced combat rules exactly?
Interesting. Paranoia usually uses very quick and simple combat because we want it to go, well, quickly. You know, laser shots aren't dodgeable, for example. Wait, now I'm looking at questions. There is way too much information on this screen for someone with attention disorder like myself. I keep seeing all these other questions that I want to answer, but can you please repeat the question for an idiot like my old self?
Well, the current question is, how crunchy are the advanced combat rules exactly? But if you see questions that you really want to answer, you go for it.
Yeah, but I should try to answer one question before trying to answer another, because then I won't answer that one either. I'll just go to the third one. How crunchy? I would say medium crunchy.
Medium crunchy.
In the core rulebook, combat will be very loosey-goosey because that's what fits Paranoia best. Recognizing that that's not everyone's favorite style, in the companion book that we call the Perfect Accomplice book, there'll be rules for adding things like initiative based on your stats so that the fastest person goes first. Rules for hit points. A whole bunch of combat modifiers like range. Again, these are completely optional. You could use some, use them all, or ignore them all. We just wanted to try to expand the game to as many different play styles and player perspectives and GM perspectives as possible. So again, I would say medium crunch.
Medium crunch. Makes sense. So, previous editions of Paranoia have provided support for alternate game types, such as playing as blue-level InSec officers, as grunts in the armed forces, as explorers of the underplex, etc. Does the new edition, either in the core rules or the Accomplice book, have any support for these alternate game types?
Currently, no. And here's a reason, though. What I have found from both being a player since 1986, yes, I am old, and to have started designing for Paranoia back in 2005. Damn it, another question. Can you repeat the question?
Previous editions of Paranoia have provided support for alternate game types, such as playing
I got it. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
What we found is that troubleshooters, plain old red clearance troubleshooters, what is the core of Paranoia Perfect Edition, that style is the one that is most fun, most widely accepted, and most requested by players.
Mm.
So I'm not going to say that we'll never dabble into blue clearance insect troopers, green clearance armed forces soldiers, high programmers, or anything like that. Honestly, right now, I want to focus us more on the core gameplay. Keep expanding with new rules, keep giving out new missions, keep creating new fun texts, and explore other ways to play instead of just troubleshooting. Once we feel like we've gotten perhaps a better way to put it, once we feel we've run out of good ideas, then we'll start looking elsewhere.
Sounds sensible. So I've got a question here. It says, is there a particular vision to the new visual design and art for this edition? But the thing is, I know that Cassie's currently doing the graphic design, and you work quite closely with her. I mean, do you have a lot of input? Do you work closely with Cassie on the visual design?
Yes and no. I'm not involved with the layout decisions, other than saying something like, hey, let's put this little tidbit in a sidebar for the GM. When it comes to a vision for the new art in the Perfect Edition, I think perhaps an unfair but clear way to put it would be, we want it Jim Holloway-esque without trying to copy his style. And what I mean is that the original artist for Paranoia was a gentleman by the name of Jim Holloway. And oh, my computer, his work was phenomenal. It was the perfect fit for this game. Unfortunately, Jim Holloway passed away a few years ago, RIP. Still a phenomenal artist back then, and was still doing great work for Paranoia. What I wanted to do here, and something I had control over, was to give detailed art direction to the artists.
That's always appreciated.
Yes, but I followed Holloway's style in that there's lots of little details. For example, there's a picture in the Kickstarter page of some green insect troopers just outside of Door, where some troubleshooters are having a little ruckus. Instead of just saying, hey, there's 5 guys there, I said, okay, there's 5 guys. One of them is attached to the ceiling and has a net and a trident. Another guy has a grenade. The other guy has the pin to that grenade. And still another carrying a cheese grater. All these tiny little details give you so much to look at in an image that in my mind, it evokes the classic art of the game, but still using a different artist's style and vision.
And the devil is in the detail.
The computer is in the detail.
The computer is in the detail. So, will Registered Mutant start out with one additional treason star, as with the prior edition?
Oh my gosh, someone's going to give me, or require me to go check my notes? Of course, I can't flip over to another window to pull that down from the Google Cloud. So I'm going to have to go on memory, which is obviously not my strong point. But still, so what was the question again?
Will Registered Mutant start out with one additional treason star, as with the prior edition?
Yes, I believe so. Registered Mutants, for those who don't know, back up a little bit. Having a mutant power in this game, so an X-Men-like mutant power, is patently illegal and will get your character executed. Almost all characters have at least one mutant power.
Everyone.
Sorry, yes, everyone. And if you want to register your mutant power, you can avoid execution. You can even use your power publicly, but you become the redheaded stepchild of the game. Everyone dislikes you, no one trusts you, and you get blamed for everything that goes wrong in the game. That's a very tricky thing to roleplay and enjoy. So we pushed it to the companion book, the Perfect Accomplice book. That one will give you rules for using Registered Mutants if you want. But if you're new to the game, I highly recommend not using them at first. Wait until you get a couple games under your belt and you realize what that could really mean to how you roleplay your character as a Registered Mutant. Whoop.
Great. Will Cyber Eyes be an optional rule, or will they be the default rule?
Interesting question. I think by Cyber Eyes, they mean last edition had something called an eyeball, which was software in your head that would be able to view and record everything you see, or that character sees, rather. Yes, that mechanic is definitely coming back. We don't call it an eyeball, lowercase I, B-A-L-L, because, I don't know, that term wasn't bad by any stretch, but it also didn't seem to take off either. So we've dropped the eyeball term and just call it by the brain implant's name, the cortex.
No whoop?
Whoa!
So I've got some, I mean, you don't have to answer this question, but someone asked, what does XP in XP points stand for? Thank you, I will report to a termination booth now.
No booth necessary, I promise. XP points stands for experience points. No, it doesn't make sense. But the idea is to satirize how people use things like ATM machine when it's really an automatic teller machine. Same thing, just with XP. Woo!
So there's a lot of people saying that they love the sound of it so far. Someone says, what are your plans for combat in Perfect Edition? I've trailed my different combat systems, official-ish and fully homebrewed when GMing, and I've never managed to find something that has the right balance of systems for fairness, or rather the illusion of it, and the fluidity needed for comedy.
That is a very highbrow question. I don't know how to answer that halfway. But I can say this. In the Perfect Edition, we've changed initiative so that it's very quick. What happens is everyone goes at their security clearance level. So in other words, anyone who has the red security clearance, which are our starting players, they all go at the same round. You can go sooner by rushing your action, which means you take a -1 die penalty to your dice pool. And you can do this up to 5 times if you'd really go really, really, really reckless. I mean, chances are you're going to screw things up, but thankfully this is Paranoia, where failure is often more fun than actually winning. As for fairness goes, all the actions, again, are simultaneous. So that treats everyone the same, which in my book would count as fair. However, we don't want too much fairness to creep in. I know. This is Paranoia. Trust me, a lack of fairness is thematic and on point here. But that said, everyone goes at the same time. And because everyone has a laser pistol, and that is by far the most used weapon in the game, during character generation, every character gets guns skill at +2, meaning you add 2 dice to your dice pool. The previous game, you could have a negative gun skill, and that made it really hard to shoot anyone, and that took away some of the fun. So to help make things, again, fair, or at least a level playing field, everyone starts the game with the same skill in shooting them laser pistols. Woo!
Someone asks, is this entire event part of an IntSec entrapment operation?
Absolutely not. Please accept 2 treason stars for bringing this up. And then, you know what? Why don't you go ahead and report to a Liberation of Guilt hostel in your area, so internal security can make a few fun plans for you during that trip.
What are your thoughts on the idea that the computer dice can slow down the game?
It can. Basically, any rule you tack on to a combat system like this will slow it down to some degree. The problem is trying to balance giving people more options in combat so they can make tactical or even strategic decisions versus keeping the rules simple so that combat can flow instead of taking a half an hour or longer, like in other not so fun RPGs I could name, but shan't.
Another question, how much lore will be in Paranoia?
Thank you. I wanted this question. One of the things I will say negative about the previous edition, one of the only things I'll say negative, because I honestly believe that Red Clearance Edition is a fine game, is that the last edition lacked lore. You don't want to add too much lore in Paranoia. Believe it or not, you want to keep the setting, Alpha Complex, as more of a frame of mind than a physical place. You also want to let Paranoia GMs have the flexibility to create their own Alpha Complex rather than run on what game designers like myself decide. That didn't answer the question fully, did it?
A bit. What new secret societies will be introduced in the new edition?
For the most part, we're not introducing new secret societies. Part of that is the if it ain't broke, don't fix it mentality. But one thing we definitely did is we created a new one called Haxor. Haxxor. But it's not really new. It's a combination of an old group called ProTech, which were very into, sort of like early adopters and tech enthusiasts. We combined them with computer freaks, or freaks, as they were called in other editions. These are the hacker groups. It made sense to combine the two because software and hardware is kind of blurring in a lot of ways these days, and especially in the science fiction future here. It made sense to combine them all. One thing that people have asked me repeatedly, and I don't understand, they keep asking about some group called the Illuminati. Now, I've heard of them before. I've read the Robert Anton Wilson trilogy, for example, a long time ago, but I remember them Golden Sub. But I don't know what they're talking about. The Illuminati has never existed in Paranoia, and so it is obviously not going to exist in the new edition either.
Obviously.
Fenor. I'm going to wait to woot just when I hear you breathe in to ask a question, just to make this even more awkward.
I love this. This is so cool. Someone says that they thought they heard that negative skills are back. Wouldn't that mean that rushing your action would benefit you when using these skills?
Interesting question. I don't think so, but let me explain why. In the game, you could have a skill at a negative rating, meaning that you're worse than average on it. For example, one of the skills is science. If you have -5 in science, the worst you could have, then you know nothing. When you put your dice pool together, if the number you end up with is actually negative, say you're supposed to roll -3 dice, you still roll 3 dice. The only issue is this. Normally, rolling a 5 or a 6 is a success, and that's all you count. How many successes? If your dice pool was technically negative, you still roll that many dice, but any dice that are failures subtract any dice that are successful, meaning it's completely streaky. Chances are you're not going to succeed. So that's why adding the negative dice, I think, will still work in this format, because it's just increasing the odds that you will roll failures, which take away more successes and lead to more failure results. Oh, I see. You're waiting for me to move before breathing in. Well done. Woot.
Someone says that they believe the best new mechanic that was introduced in Paranoia RCE was group character creation. They believe it helped create tension between the players. Does Perfect Edition preserve this or have a variant for using this?
We're keeping it. Be frank, that was a stroke of genius. Really loved it. One of the best things about that edition. So we absolutely brought that back here. The only difference is, like I said earlier, everyone has guns at +2. Everyone has a gun skill at +2 to make sure that everyone can participate in shooting each other in the back. But to clarify, during this edition's, the Perfect Edition's, character creation system, when you take a skill that's positive, say science at +1, the next character next to you, clockwise, will get that same skill at -1. Meaning that whatever skill you pick, you could pick a skill specifically to sabotage your neighbor. This keeps going around different ways so that everyone gets a new chance to start. But we're absolutely keeping that mechanic back. Yes, players during character creation can screw with each other's character creation and thereby create rivalries before the game even begins.
So much fun. So will you be implementing services and/or R&D experimental weapons and devices?
No and yes. Woot!
No,
sorry. For those of you who don't know, in the Paranoia XP edition, they introduced a concept called services. These are side jobs you have to do during your adventure for different powerful groups in the organization, or in the setting, like armed forces or research and design. The new edition does not include services. In my opinion, while designing and playing XP, these services are so easy to forget about and ignore when focused on the main part of the mission that they kind of lost their point. There wasn't really a good reason to have them. That said, in Paranoia Perfect Edition, we have returned to outfitting, meaning that once you get your mission, but before you officially start, you are sent to either a retail store to pick up essential gear, or you are sent to research and design, where you are assigned experimental gear to test in the field. And if you know Paranoia, experimental gear that you test in the field should give you shivers.
Mm. So will we see the return of termination booths and confession booths?
Termination booths, no. The point is kind of, well, there really isn't much of a point to have a termination booth. People can be terminated at any time, and we'd rather have a character do that than a static object. That said, confession booths are definitely coming back. In fact, one of the stretch goals is a mission called Certifiable. We designed this especially for people who are new to playing Paranoia, as it goes over all the standard mission tropes, introduces a lot of setting details that you really should know, like commies and internal security and security clearances, and all that stuff. And in that, confession booths, which are like, well, if you ever been to a mall and seen those tiny little photo booths with the little curtain you draw across, replace the curtain with a door, put a rusty grain in a tile floor at the bottom, and that's where people go in to confess their treason, their crimes, to the settings generalized AI, the computer. And a lot of people who go in actually come back out.
Wow.
So those are definitely back.
Buying additional clones, is that still restricted to clearance of green and up?
Yes, it didn't make sense thematically to give citizens in this setting the right to decide for themselves how many lives they get. That said, one of the things you can do with character advancement in the game, at the end of debriefing, if you want to keep playing that character, you could spend experience points called upgrade points, or up, to gain new clones and decrease your clone number. So if you made it to debriefing on your last clone, you can get 1, 2, or 3 more, something like that. So no, you can't just buy it, but yes, you can get more during character advancement.
I have a question here asking, what are the plans for sale of the handbooks and other things post-campaign? That would be a Mongoose question. It's probably going to be put up on our website. But obviously the Kickstarter happens first.
Yeah, again, this is one of those questions that a word monkey like myself doesn't have clearance to answer. Even if I did, I wouldn't know what the right answer is. The only thing I will say is this. I'm pretty sure that any Kickstarter exclusive, for example, the Puppet Strings mini game, will not be for sale after the Kickstarter ends. I can't guarantee that. Mongoose does their own thing.
That is pretty much, what it is.
The whole point of having Kickstarter exclusives is to encourage customers to back at a higher level, which not only increases the money gained, but also shows more interest in the game line. And that helps convince Mongoose and the people who own the copyrights to keep going with us and keep publishing this stuff.
It's true. If it's a Kickstarter exclusive, then you need to sign up to the Kickstarter to get those exclusives. They are exclusive for a reason.
And I kind of hate that. I'm not a big fan of exclusionary stuff like this, but I also have to recognize this is a Kickstarter. This is how Kickstarters work in the world, and it's okay to go along with what can convince the powers that be that Paranoia is a solid game due for more and more products for years to come.
So back to questions. Are the additional clones prone to genetical defects the same as in XP? Or is the genome cleared to prevent that if, say, you got these clones as an achievement reward or the upgrades?
For the most part, no. We did not include genetic drift for 2 reasons. First of all, I kind of forgot it was a thing. I'll be honest. Second of all, the purpose of giving people additional clones is to keep them in the game and keep them playing. While I have done genetic drift before, in other words, if you get more and more lives, each one is a little degraded. You start to lose some skills and some stat numbers, that sort of thing. The problem is that I don't want to give players a character that's not fun to play. I mean, the whole point of the game is to enjoy yourselves. And while Paranoia does have a very unique way for players and GMs to enjoy themselves, I really don't want characters out there that are just so bad to play that the players get honestly frustrated instead of just kind of in a fun way frustrated. I hope that makes sense.
Makes sense to me. A follow-on question on the same subject. Since genetic drift isn't being used, will there be some sort of mutant power-changing mechanic?
At least for right now, no. We are looking into different products and how we can expand the game line to give new experiences, support other ones, that sort of thing. Again, we're worried about changing too much for the player's perspective. Once you get a mutant power, you start to figure out how to use it for fun in the game. And we fear that swapping that out with something brand new puts that player at a disadvantage compared to everyone else in a not fun way. So for right now, at least, there is no genetic drift, and mutant powers stay the same.
Woo. Okay. Are there any plans for new Paranoia miniatures?
Ooh, good question. I got no idea. Sorry. Again, all I do is throw words onto a page and pray that they work. I'm not privy to anything like the dice. No, not really me. And so any plans Mongoose might have for miniatures, whether cardstock or traditional 3D printing kind of things, I'm afraid I am left out of those conversations.
See, some of these questions, some of these questions I can answer when it's the Mongoose ones anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, but I like talking and attention.
I know. I like giving you attention.
I like forgetting questions halfway through. It's my jam.
Could you do your friend computer impression?
Holy cow. A question I've never, ever been asked before. That is interesting. Yes, give me 1 second to find something to read, and I'll read it in my official computer voice when I run games. 1 moment, please.
Awesome.
Attention troubleshooters. We have a question. Is the Perfect Edition ready for print? Or how long should we expect before the edition is complete? And to answer my own question, the core rulebook itself and the accomplished book are both written, edited, laid out. There's probably a few bits of artwork that still need to be plugged in, but otherwise it's good to go. The same is relatively true for the stretch goals on the campaign site that were originally in blue. They should still be in blue. I just haven't checked this morning. Those were stretch goals we prepared for. We were completely unprepared for how quickly this took off, which is a great problem to have. But all the stretch goals that are in red on the campaign site, those are still in the design process itself. So that should answer the question I just asked myself.
So someone said they loved some of the really odd and out of context or mildly irrelevant notes in the corners and edges of pages in past editions, particularly XP. Their favourite being an especially long rant about Emacs. Is something similar featured in the new handbooks?
Let me think about that for a minute. I guess a great way to put it is this. We've included little Easter eggs, references, one-liners, things like that. But we didn't want to go too much into sidebars about these little notes and put them in the corners and edges and all that stuff. Sometimes that can be hilarious. Sometimes it can fall flat. But either way, it's not that important to the game. And we wanted to, as much as possible, only put content in any of the books that can be useful to GMs and players. Again, there's nothing wrong with throwing in a few jokes here and there. That's what we do. But we don't want to do like an entire half-page sidebar where I talk about great things so I can show everyone how cool I am. I know how cool I am, and it doesn't matter what I write or not. So we kind of avoided that to keep things a little tighter and more focused. Woo!
Someone asks if there's any news on Scrubbots.
Scrubbots are the cleaning robots of the setting. The only thing I can say for sure is that, yes, they exist. Yes, they still clean. And yes, I still pronounce them Screwbots. Woo!
Right, well, that's all the questions we have so far. If anyone else has any other questions, please bung them in chat while you have the opportunity to do so. In the meantime, it's been years since I actually played Paranoia. Last I remember, I played the Paranoia the card game. Do you remember that?
Oh my! Do I still have it? Where is it? Yes, it's on my shelf. Of course I still have it. I helped playtest that.
Oh, wow. That's the last time I played Paranoia, but I'm going to have to dig my teeth into this new edition, I think.
For those who don't know, there is an old card game published a decade or two ago, and I believe it was called the Paranoia Mandatory Fun Bonus Card Game. And it is brilliant. It does take a while to play. The game does drag, I'll admit that. But it really does a great idea simulating the chaos, confusion, and humor inherent in Paranoia. So if you can find a copy that's still out there somewhere, I do recommend it.
I recommend it too. It's so much fun. We have a few more questions. Are mechanical weapons legal to use for troubleshooters? In XP, you had projectile weapon skill, and in RCE, you could get old-fashioned weapons from favors. Are they still available for sale and or legal?
Yes, they are included. They're going to be rare, though. One of the features of the last and this edition in the setting is the idea of resource scarcity. And so, at least on paper, it makes more sense to focus more on energy rechargeable weapons than ones that shoot out propellant and a solid slug. However, at least in the Accomplice book, we do include what are called pop guns, if I remember the term correctly. I could be wrong, and I can't check, or I'll lose my connection to Discord. But they were slug throwers, basically. So again, they are present in the new edition, but they are going to be rare. Woo!
Is there an official Alpha Complex anthem?
Sorry, I'm pausing because I actually tried to think of one on the spot. No, there is no official Alpha Complex anthem. However, the core book, as part of fleshing out the setting some more, includes some top 5 lists, like top 5 favorite snacks that aren't immediately fatal. There is a top 5 approved song downloads and a top 5 illegal song downloads.
Oh.
It's really just fluff, but it's a way to kind of get the unique tone of Paranoia through the text some more and give GMs and players maybe something funny to talk about during the game.
So can you recite any off the top of your head on either of those lists?
Wait, so you're asking me to remember? Haven't we already figured out that this is a bad call? I know one approved song was Onward Loyal Soldiers by the approved chorus of HTD Sector. Here's a fun tidbit. In the top 5 illegal songs, all the band names were real band names in real life at some point in time.
Oh, wow.
Each of those bands changed to become a much more familiar name, but I'll leave y'all to discover that Easter egg for yourselves. One song I do remember off the bad download list was Ultraviolet's They're Gonna Die by the band Commie Propaganda Machine. That's the only thing I can remember off the top of my head.
So I'm going to ask a question now. This is a question from me. Is the new Paranoia full of Easter eggs?
No. Why would I do that, Fenord? I did have fun writing the, not just me, sorry. Keith Garrett, Greg Ingber, if I'm pronouncing their last names correctly, both are on the team. Both have written for RCE. Greg was actually one of the writers for XP Edition. Those two guys have been phenomenal. I am so lucky to have them on this team. They're doing great work, and most importantly, they get what Paranoia is about. So they're doing phenomenal work. Did that answer your question, or did I screw up that one as well?
No, you're doing good. You're doing real good. Will there be any rules for playing as high programmers and or multiple opposed alpha complexes?
At least for right now, no to both. Again, we want to focus more on creating the best game possible for the best mode possible, which is red troubleshooters. So we're not even going to go into orange, yellow, or green troubleshooters unless we get some really good ideas.
Are you willing to share any lore on the history of Alpha Complex?
Oh, that's a tough question. Tougher than it looks. The thing is, it doesn't matter. Paranoia's setting is rare in that how it came to be doesn't really impact the current setting. We do include a page or so of a possible history. But again, we're walking that fine line between providing details that people can sink their teeth into without providing so many details that Alpha Complex becomes less yours and more ours.
Is the outside or underneath going to be expanded?
Yes, but not yet. For the previous edition, the first product I worked on was called Acute Paranoia, which is the same title as an old first edition book, but this is the RCE version. And that got really deep into the underplex, parts of the giant domed underground city that are abandoned, but people can still visit, as well as the outdoors, going beyond the dome and seeing what's left of the earth. So because that was not too long ago, we're wary about pumping out new products and looking like we're just trying to rehash old stuff to get more money. That said, once we get through all the stretch goals and stuff like that, Mongoose and I will sit down and we'll talk about the game line moving forward. And I wouldn't be surprised if we started looking into ways to introduce some outdoors and underplex content without having to repeat what RCE did. Woo!
So then this next one is more of a request rather than a question. Someone has asked if you could please ask Mongoose to re-release the Paranoia mandatory bonus fun card game in their next Kickstarter.
Oh yeah, I can ask.
Another question. What are your personal recommendations for music to put in the background while running Paranoia?
Honestly, I typically run Paranoia at cons. Partly it's just playtesting, and partly because I absolutely love this game and feel honored to be writing for it right now, never mind be able to play it with other people. And in con settings, you can't really do music. If I had my druthers, I would probably just stick with some generic science fiction background noise. Not music per se, just little boops and bleeps and that kind of stuff, just to kind of drive home the science fiction side of the setting. But other than that, I'm not a big fan of music during it all, because I just want the excitement to come from each other talking to each other, if that makes sense.
I believe there's if you go on YouTube, you can get the background from Star Trek, spaceship noises and stuff. You could just put that on a loop.
Very true, but as we experienced earlier at the start of this, technology and me don't always mix. So I'm not sure I could even figure out how to set that up other than a very simple Spotify playlist.
What of reflect armor? Will laser guns still be color coordinated? And will higher level reflect still defend against lower level lasers?
Yes.
Yes,
So the main weapon of the setting is going to be the ubiquitous laser pistol. And because society there is broken up into security clearances coded by color, the energy within a laser pistol is likewise coded. So one of the lowest security clearances is red. So they get a red laser pistol that's not that powerful. The armor against lasers is called reflective armor, or usually just shortened to reflect. This will block any color lower on the spectrum. So, for example, orange reflect armor will block red laser shots. It will not block higher laser shots like yellow or green or the rest of the Roy G. Biv spectrum. And they work a little bit on colors that match the reflect. So yes, that is all still there. Armor and lasers are rated by security clearance color, which determines how powerful they are.
Will there be any recommended virtual tabletop integrations with character sheets and graphic handouts for groups playing remotely?
Yes, but this is one of them things that I'm barely involved with. I do know that Mongoose has been working with Fantasy Grounds to create all the VTT assets needed to play the game. Again, asterisks, I don't know exactly what that counts as because I'm not involved in this. All I know is I wrote 6 pre-gens for Fantasy Grounds, so that way if GMs want to, they can get into the game quicker. So virtual tabletop support is coming. However, for right now, it's Fantasy Grounds only, and I'm afraid I do not have a timetable on when that will be available or exactly what would be available.
How would you recommend handling a player that you accidentally enabled to rise his or her security clearance? Gentle ways to demote them, ways to make them take blame for everything.
Instead of looking at how to demote them, I would just say, look at what's making the game fun for everyone. There's been games I've played where I've promoted someone to orange just on the spur of the moment, and it didn't work. Suddenly they were lording power over everyone, and the game lost energy. And in that case, I demoted them back down to red or maybe even to infrared, just because you want to balance it out, so to speak. But if you promote someone to orange or even yellow, and everyone is having a good time, and no one accidentally has a lot of power over the others, then I say keep it. Again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Woo.
It's a good philosophy. How many releases a year of material is expected for the foreseeable future?
The only answer I can give as a freelance game designer is, oh my gosh, that's a lot. I'm afraid we don't have any set number of things to release per year. Mongoose might have that and hasn't shared it with me, which would be proper. Again, I'm just a freelancer here. So I'm afraid I can't answer the question about how many releases will coming out. To be frank, this Kickstarter, oh man, thank you guys so much. The response on the first day alone was humbling, literally. Like, I didn't know what to say to people because it was such a good response. So all the stretch goals, both the blue ones and the red ones, have to be done first. Then I believe I'll sit down, like I said, with Mongoose and talk about the rest of the game line and what future products might look like. But I don't believe we'll have any set number. We want to work on good ideas rather than an arbitrary number of products to release. Woo!
It's definitely mind-blowing how the Kickstarter is going. Speaking of the Kickstarter, there are only 7 days left, so if you haven't backed it, now's your chance. Get in those backers. Let's have a look if there's any more questions.
I have one here that was asked in the main chat with Mongoose.
Go for
it. Chat. Where are you? What are your top 3 tips as a GM for Paranoia that are not in the books? Well, if there were top 3, I would have put them in the book. But I get what you're saying. What's not in the book? All right, so GM advice for running Paranoia. Number 1, I'm not sure if this is in the book or not, so please excuse me if I reiterate. Paranoia GMs have a ton of power in this game. The GMs are allowed to change or ignore any rule if that gets in the way of a good story. But that also comes with responsibility to use that power well. So don't focus on what's making the game fun for you, Mr. GM. Let's focus on what's making the game fun for everyone, including you. And use your power wisely, not to attack players, but to guide them towards better play. Second tip, have lots of notes. Oh my gosh. Again, I think I talked about this in the core book. I do apologize for repeating myself. I have never played a game as a GM like Paranoia where I've gotten so many little paper notes, so many texts from players. It is super hard to keep track of all these sometimes. I mean, you literally get 5 or 6 notes at the same time, all saying to do something different in the next turn. So one piece of advice for Paranoid GMs, figure out what works for you to keep track of them. I like to use Post-it notes so that when they come back, I can unfold it and post it on the inside of my GM screen when I'm at a con. Because as you can see, I'm forgetful. And I need things staring me in the face, and then there's only a 50-50 chance of forgetting them. The last bit of Paranoia advice I would give is this. Paranoia is a very different game than other RPGs. And I make fun. I call them not fun RPGs. Don't get me wrong. I love gaming. There's so many games. I have gigabytes of games on my hard drive that I still want to play and haven't gotten around to it. But that said, Paranoia can be hard to get in at first. It's hard to grok the tone and how you're not supposed to cooperate all the time, but probably still have to at least, for making appearances. Remember that players can have a hard time getting into this new mode of thinking, and don't punish them at first. Let people have space to make some mistakes and say the wrong word, do the wrong thing. Again, you don't want to let that go all game long, but at first, give them some mercy. Give them the grace to take the time needed to learn how to play the game right. And just use punishments to guide them along that track. Woo!
So, I don't have any more questions in the questions from Mongoose chat. I don't suppose you see any that you like the look of anywhere else that you've been looking?
Not that I could see, but if I missed something because I'm an idiot, please let me know.
Okay, we'll give everyone a few minutes to post last-ditch questions in the questions from Mongoose section of our Discord. In the meantime, we have one question come in that says, if you have a bunch of players who will not cooperate, are there any problems with letting them become their own secret society?
No problem. Hell, that's a damn good idea. So in the game, everyone belongs, to a secret society, which are illegal groups that either support the government too much or are anti-government or just so weird out there that they make them illegal. If a party of troubleshooters, a team, decides they want to create their own secret society, I think that would be a fantastic way to build a short campaign. So I would say, yeah, go ahead and do it.
So just being corrected, not cooperate, as in insist on collaborating.
Oh, what's wrong with cooperation? Yeah, that's easier to break. Give them vital reasons to not cooperate. For example, pull a character aside and say, if you cooperate with them rewind. Pull a player aside. Tell them that their secret society has a special mission for them right here, right now. That is to terminate one of the other players by name. Keep terminating them until they're out of clones. and then provide some in-game consequences and rewards for not doing or doing just that. Once you give people a reason not to cooperate, and it comes as interesting, fun, an interesting decision to make on their part, they tend to get into the rhythm of not cooperating more often.
Woo! How do you sidebar as the computer with a player and keep the flow? Do you use Post-it?
When I'm playing at cons, if it's something I can do very quickly, rewind. If it's something I can write down clearly and quickly, I just use a Post-it note or a folded index card or whatever. If I need more, such as when we first start the game and I pull players aside, that's literally what I do. I just stand up from the table, walk to a corner, have them come meet me there, and then we can talk openly without revealing any important secrets. Things are a little bit easier when you play online because you can have private chat for that, and typing is a lot faster than writing. So for online play, it's just a private chat room. For physical play, short, use a note, longer, physically pull them aside. Woo!
So we do get questions about upcoming products and the release of products. So if you have any questions on the release of products, just email us at Mongoose and we can get those answered for you. I'm going to concentrate on the questions specifically for WJ. Someone says, to what degree can high security clearance citizens penalize and reward troubleshooters? Can they promote or demote them? Can they give XP anymore? But can they give fines as in XP?
Yes. If that person you're giving all this grief to, it has a lower security clearance than you. So, for example, red troubleshooters. Again, most people start the game at red clearance. They can request fines, treason stars, and things like that to each other or other red clearance citizens. Asking is fine. The computer ultimately decides, so the answer could be no. But an orange clearance person can both fine and give treason stars or even promote someone of a lower security clearance. So in other words, starting players can beat up on the lowest of the low in the game, the infrared citizens, but they can get in turn beat up by just about everyone else in the game.
I'm going to say this one because, I know it's a stupid question, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's just hilarious.
There's no stupid questions, only stupid answers.
Only stupid answers. How much treason could Friend Computer commit if Friend Computer could commit treason?
My mind is filled with woodchucks right now. Thank you for that reference. I haven't thought about that in years. How much? Unfortunately, the question itself is flawed. If the computer does it, it is not treason. Full stop. End of story. Fnord. Thank you.
Fnord. Will clearances still be based on XP like in the prior game, or will it be decided purely by Friend Computer / higher clearance citizens?
If you mean whether someone can buy a new clearance, no. In the Perfect Accomplice book, we do introduce an alternate rule where security clearance is decided by your XP point balance, meaning that if you get enough of the in-game currency, the computer will automatically bump you up to a different security clearance. And if your balance, again, not spending, your holding balance, if that drops below a certain number, you fall back down to the lower security clearance. But that's about the only thing we do. And again, that's an entirely alternate optional rule. Otherwise, we want to make sure that the GM has the power and freedom to do whatever they need, which they already do. But it's kind of nice when the rules support that. So at least in the core rules, players can get promoted by doing well enough, bribing well enough, or threatening people who have that power to promote you.
Someone asks, do you have any tips on adapting other system adventures to Paranoia? For example, they thought of adapting Deadland's famed Night Train adventure, but they're having a hard time taking such a serious one and making it lighter and more humorous.
Yeah, that's going to be very hit or miss, I think. It really depends not on the game so much, but on the individual mission. Because a paranoia adventure is often filled with catch-22s, unwinnable scenarios, Kobayashi Marus, that sort of thing, that most other games consider bad design. So taking like the train adventure from Deadlands and converting that into play, it can work. I'm not going to say it won't, but you're going to have to go over it with a very fine-tooth comb and look in the other game's adventure for things that don't fit the setting. For example, security clearances. Most games don't have anything like that. Sometimes they'll have like rank in military or positions in government, but nothing quite like security clearances in a paranoia game. And that's going to be really hard to transfer over. Because not only, it's more than just, hey, we'll make that marshal a yellow clearance character. You'll also have to understand the context security clearances bring, which is that you have to obey those of higher clearances. You might be in a situation where a marshal is defending the law, so you have to obey it. But I don't know if that's necessarily the power you want to give to that character over the other PCs. So the only tips I have, focus on missions that are short, because paranoia missions always run long, because there's all this wonderful emergent gameplay from players just interacting with each other. And, I can't think of any other tips. Honestly, it's not a great idea. And I hate saying that because I don't want to tell anyone don't do something. So do it. Make it work if it works for your group. For my 2 credits, I wouldn't bother doing that unless I found something that I was pretty much willing to rewrite from scratch.
Woo! Next question is, service section origins for characters like PLC, R&D, etc. were removed for the RCE edition. Are they reintroduced in some way in Perfect?
Yes. Service groups are back with a vengeance, as they say. RCE did not introduce, the first edition of Paranoia introduced service groups, which are sort of like sectors of industry. Like there's one dedicated to producing goods and services and foods. Another is based on repairing stuff. You get the idea. In RCE, service groups were just pretty much as an afterthought. It wasn't a big deal. I felt that was one of the things RCE needed to improve upon. So in Perfect Edition, we are definitely bringing back service groups. And in fact, what service group you pick during character creation does modify some of your skills for the positive and for the negative. For example, if you're part of the armed forces, you're going to have better skills at combat and probably less better skills at psychology or communication or charm, that sort of thing. So they are definitely back, and in fact, they will impact your character. Woo!
Expanding on the prior PC-only secret society idea, if you had a group that wanted to make a longer campaign out of Paranoia, would it be viable to make the basic campaign premise the troubleshooters band together to get one of their number promoted, who in turn immediately promotes their fellows as a cooperative seeking to eventually reach Ultraviolet? Are there any considerations that such a meta plot should be especially aware of that would not apply to red-only one-shots?
Yeah, that's getting into dicey territory here. It's starting to feel too much like a traditional role-playing game that emphasizes cooperation. Again, if this is the way you want to run the game, as soon as you buy it, it's your game now. So you do it. If you think that's what your players like, to cooperate and build a secret society together and see how much power you could amass in the setting, go for it. Now, that won't be traditional Paranoia, which is why I don't recommend it. This game is designed in a very specific way, just like a car engine is designed in a very specific way. And there's some things it does well and some things it doesn't do well. The idea of promoting one person to cooperate and get everyone else promoted, again, you do you. I would not recommend that for Paranoia. Part of the point is to introduce competition amongst the players to build literal fear and paranoia in the players, much the way a horror movie will build both into people who view it. You know it's a game, so you can enjoy these feelings that otherwise would not be enjoyable. So I would not recommend doing that, but if that's your cake, the only tip I would give is make sure that they're making enemies along the way. Keep track of people this group pisses off in their quest to rise into power both legally and behind the scenes. And bring those suckers back repeatedly to show the consequences of cooperating and stepping on people on your way to the top. Woo!
Okay, we've got time for just a couple more. Are there any new Daves introduced in Perfect Edition, or do we have to come up with them ourselves?
I love this question because I always pronounce it dive.
Oh, dive.
You know what? It's never pronounced. So your way of pronouncing it is just as good as mine. I can't remember exactly what DAIV stands for, but in the setting, a Dave or a dive. Oh, you know what? Let's go with Dave because it brings back oh gosh, Stanley Kubrick's 2001: Space Odyssey.
Oh, all right. I was thinking Red Dwarf. Everybody's dead, Dave.
Oh my gosh, how did I not catch the dead Red Dwarf question? I love that show. Oh man, I'm okay. I'm stepping down as a designer. I fail. Thank you. Good night. No, DAIVs are artificial intelligences like the computer, the one that runs the setting. But these are more like viruses. They should not exist, but they do on the network. We definitely still have them in Paranoia Perfect Edition. In fact, one of the upcoming missions that is not a stretch goal yet definitely centers on a DAIV. That said, we're not emphasizing it. Actually, a way to put it is we treat it similar to how the last edition did. It's an idea, we put it out there, but we don't overemphasize it. Woo!
Do secret society / service skill bonuses reflect on a character sheet, or do you keep them secret and just tell players to use more dice where you deem it appropriate without telling what they're from?
No, the service group and secret society bonuses to stats and skills are on the public side of the character sheet. To be frank, it is easier to reverse engineer that by counting dice being rolled than combing over their character sheet and looking for the tiny numbers from where you're sitting at the table.
You wait until my voice goes active before doing that.
I know, I'm waiting.
You're waiting, sitting there waiting patiently. I've heard that you can spend Moxie to get boons from secret societies. Likewise, will you go mad when you reach 0 Moxie?
Yes and yes. So in the game, Moxie is a meta resource. You usually start off with 8 points, if I remember correctly. And you spend these during the game for a couple things. First, you can turn good dice into failed dice for your roll or someone else's. So I'm not sure why you would sabotage your own roll. I have seen it happen. But it's also used to call in favors from either your service group or your secret society. And these favors range from 1 point to 5 points, so a minor effect to a huge effect. And examples are listed in the book for the GM, so pick one up on the fly. The favors from Moxie for service groups are all related to their mission. So, the internal security one could be get someone arrested. Likewise, the secret society versions are all thematic as well. So communists can kind of help steal objects and redistribute XP points and that sort of thing. There's one other use of you also use Moxie to power your mutant power. If you have one, that is. Woo!
Last question. or rather second to last question, because I have one question at the end. Are there any thoughts on adapting GM versus player adventures from other systems, such as early D&D Tomb of Horrors or Paranoia?
At least for now, no. I get what you're saying. Like a game, rewind, an adventure, like Tomb of Horrors, is clearly designed to be antagonistic between the GM and the players, because it was originally designed as a tournament game where you're trying to eliminate players and see which ones survive. That said, we don't want to make an adventure that necessarily purposely goes at the players. We'd rather the players, the PCs die off from either their own bad decision making or by decisions made from other players. Don't get me wrong, Paranoia adventures are deadly. There's a reason you get 6 lives in this game. But going into other games' adventures brings back what I was talking about before. They're just designed differently. And especially something like Tomb of Horrors, some of those can be so iconic that any attempt to copy their structure will come across as a bad parody rather than an interesting satire of that genre. So I'm afraid for right now, at least, we will not be looking at other GM versus PC adventures from other games. Woo!
Well, I'm going to finish up with one last question. Could you, for those who have not backed the Kickstarter yet, and in the most elaborate way possible, explain why they should go and back the Kickstarter right now?
Great question. Couple reasons. First of all, look at them stretch goals. We burst through all of them on the first day. There's a number more coming out, and this is included with the right pledge levels. So you stand to get a lot of content, a lot of bang for your buck, as we say here in the States. But also, this is a game created by myself and 2 others, Keith and Greg, and we grew up playing this game. We absolutely love it. And as one early preview said, our love for this game shines through the writing and the decisions we made and the rules. And we call it Perfect Edition. Obviously, that's a joke. I honestly feel this edition is fantastic. If you like Paranoia, I believe that you will love this edition. But I also believe that since we emphasize the GMs having fun with players rather than at the player's expense, that this edition is also going to be great for people who either played it when they were younger and haven't touched it since, or have just heard about this amazing game and want to know what a Hall of Fame RPG feels like to play. And lastly, I get a piece of the earnings, and I want a new mudroom. So please give me some so I can do that. Maybe a hot tub. Oh, you know what? Screw the mudroom. Hot tub. I live in Chicago, and it's cold here. I would love a hot tub. So please, give me more money. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, WJ, thank you so much for coming in and answering all of these questions. So many questions. Some of them are really complex as well. Also, thank you to everyone who supplied those questions and so much interest. Do you have any last final thoughts tonight, WJ?
Of course. I'm a famous game designer. Of course you
do.
Honestly, I just want to end with this. Thank you. Thank you to you, Kat and Mongoose, for trusting us with this. Thank you to the copyright holders, the original creators of the game. They've approved everything, and thank you to them for giving us a chance to steward such a game we absolutely love. But perhaps biggest of all, thank you to everyone who is backing it. Thank you to everyone who has ever played the game and talked about it to others. Thank you to those who still run 1st, 2nd, XP, 25th, RCE, any edition of the game at cons or at home for your friends. It's cliche to say that none of this is possible without you, but that's actually true, especially with a Kickstarter. So I just wanted to say thank you for keeping this game alive for so long that finally we have a chance to try to give back to a game that has meant so much to us over the years. So honestly, thank you all for being here. Thank you for backing. And even if you can't back, Thank you for playing and listening.
Very cool. So we will call it a night there. Thanks for everyone who sent in their questions. If you'd like to find out more, head over to Kickstarter. There are still 7 days left on the Perfect Paranoia Edition Kickstarter. And there's even an Easter egg on the Kickstarter, so get searching. I hope you've all had a great night talking with W.J. MacGuffin, author, and hopefully we'll see you all again soon. Good night, everyone. And, keep shooting, troubleshooters.
Remember, everyone, trust no one, stay alert, and keep your laser handy. Thanks.